Good morning, children. Last class, we had completed Kingdom Monira and we started with the second kingdom, that is Kingdom Protista. And first class coming under Kingdom Protista also we had completed. Hope you have revised, hope you have gone through. So please see that you learn your daily lesson. So many difficult terms or new terms you are learning. So don't keep it for the next day. The same day itself, you please revise whatever is given in the textbook. Okay. And printed notes, once the chapter is over, you will be getting the printed notes. And the previous chapters printed notes, if you want, you can take a copy and file it. Once you join back, you will be getting a hard copy of it. And not only that, the notes are uploaded in your our school website too. Okay. So I just wanted to ask you some review questions. Let me see how many of you have read. What is meant by conjugation? Sania, what do you mean by conjugation?
It's
Where
a
we came across?
it's a sexual method of reproduction in bacteria.
In?
Bacteria.
Correct? Bacteria. And what happens in conjugation? What is happening?
DNA is exchanged.
Yes, very good. So two bacteria come closer and there will be the transfer of DNA material from one bacterium to the other. And what is meant by diatomaceous earth? Nidhi, what do you know about diatomaceous earth? Unmute and speak, Nidhi. Yes.
The cell walls are made with two or more overlapping thin sheets.
Diatomaceous earth. What is meant by that? You are saying about the cell wall of diatoms. But what forms diatomaceous earth? Build upon what you have already said. It's connected to that.
Filled with cell.
Who prepares diatomaceous earth? Or which organism leaves diatomaceous earth? Name you can get from the question itself. Diatomaceous earth is prepared by which group of organisms?
Protista.
Diatomaceous earth. Who prepares it? Gayatri, I'll come back to Nidhi. Diatomaceous earth is left by which group of organisms?
Diatoms.
Diatoms. Okay. Now tell me what is diatomaceous earth? What forms diatomaceous earth?
When the diatoms die, their cell walls get accumulated and later they form.
Louder. When
When
the
these
diatoms die,
their cell walls, which are indispensable, get accumulated.
What is their cell wall made of?
Silica.
Silica. And they form deposits over billions of years and form what is known as diatomaceous earth. And how is it useful to us, Nevin? How is diatomaceous earth useful to us? Any use for that?
It is used for making syrups and things, right?
Making syrups. Is it for making syrups?
I mean, like, no.
I will give you a clue. It's
filtering, right? Polishing and stuff.
Yes, it can be used for polishing and also for filtering syrups and oils. Okay, not for making syrups, filtering syrups. So with that, last class we had completed the first class, that is chrysophytes. We completed chrysophytes and we learned that chrysophytes include diatoms and desmids or golden algae. So today we are moving on to the other classes coming under Protista. So in the beginning itself, we had told that Protista can be subdivided into 5 classes. And we could cover only the first one, that was chrysophytes. So today we are going to learn about the other classes coming under Kingdom Protista. Okay? Even though we had covered Kingdom Protista, once again the class, to get that connectivity with what we had learned last class. I'll just quickly go through kingdom Protista. It includes single-celled organisms. They are mainly aquatic and forms a link with plants, animals, and fungi. They can reproduce both by sexual and asexual means, where in sexual means the gametes fuse, resulting in the formation of a zygote. And they are eukaryotes. From that itself you will understand they have a well-defined nucleus and membrane-bound organelles, and some of them are provided with locomotory organs like flagella and cilia. And these are the 5 classes. Protista includes protozoans, chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, and slime molds. And we had completed chrysophytes last class. And under chrysophytes, we learned they are freshwater and marine, and they are microscopic, can be seen only with a microscope, and they move slowly along with water currents in water. And majority of them have chlorophyll, and they can carry out photosynthesis. And it includes 2 groups of organism. One is diatoms and the other one is golden algae. Then we learned about diatomaceous earth. They are having silica deposits in their cell walls, and the cell wall is peculiar in that it is having 2 thin overlapping shells which fit in just like a soap box. And these cell wall deposits get accumulated over billions of years and form what is known as diatomaceous earth. Diatomaceous earth is highly useful. It helps us in polishing and filtration of oils and syrups. It is very gritty substance. That is why it is being used for all these purposes. And they are considered to be the chief producers because they carry out photosynthesis, being or having chlorophyll in them. So they are known as chief producers. Okay, chrysophytes are known as the chief producers in the ocean. Now we are moving on to the next class coming under phylum Protista, dinoflagellates. One important feature of this class you will get from the name itself, dinoflagellates, 2 flagella. They are provided with 2 flagella. So I'll tell you about that as we keep on discussing. So starting with the first point, most of them are marine. They are found in seawater or salty water. They too are capable of carrying out photosynthesis. Majority of them are capable of carrying out photosynthesis, which means that they contain the green pigment chlorophyll essential to carry out photosynthesis. And they not only contain green colored pigment, along with green color, they also contain other pigments like yellow, blue, brown, red. So depending upon which pigment is present in them, accordingly their color will differ. You can see different colored dinoflagellates in the figure shown. So depending upon which pigment is prominent in them, accordingly they will come in different colors. And the cell wall. So we were discussing about the cell wall in chrysophytes, where in diatoms we learned that their cell wall is having silica deposits which can later form diatomaceous earth. Here also the cell wall is also having a peculiarity. It is provided with cellulose plates. You know that in plants the cell wall is made of a complex carbohydrate known as cellulose. And in dinoflagellates also their cell wall is having plates made out of cellulose on the outer surface, which gives extra support and protection. I'll repeat again, the cell wall present in dinoflagellates, they have plates made out of cellulose on their outer surface. And as I told you, dinoflagellates, 2 flagella, majority of them are provided with 2 flagella. And there is difference in their orientation, or how these flagella are arranged is also unique. One will be arranged longitudinally, lengthwise, and the other one will be transversely or horizontally placed in a furrow, in a gap between the cell plates. We already learned that in these organisms, their cell wall is made up of plates made out of cellulose. So in the gaps in between these cellulose cell plates, the flagella arise. So two flagella, dinoflagellates, two flagella are present, and the positioning or the orientation of these two flagella are different. One will be placed horizontally and one will be placed longitudinally in furrows present between the cell wall plates, which is made out of cellulose. And one unique feature or one special feature that we need to learn about dinoflagellates is that certain dinoflagellate, especially the red one, red dinoflagellates, there are a group of dinoflagellates which are red in color. One prominent example among them is Goniolax. Goniolax is a type of red dinoflagellate. And we had already discussed about algal bloom when we discussed about cyanobacteria. When there is rapid influx or when the water bodies receive nutrients due to pollution or washed away from some places wherein from the detergents used in household or fertilizers used, when these are washed into water bodies, the nitrates, phosphates, etc. present in them can promote rapid growth of algae in water bodies and they cause algal bloom. We had learned it in previous class. So red tides brought about by red dinoflagellates is also arising due to a similar situation. Due to pollution, when nutrients are washed into water bodies, they can promote the rapid growth of this red dinoflagellates. And when they rapidly grow, when they multiply, they will form a thick population and they form a layer on the surface of the water body or the sea. When red color organisms, they form a layer on the surface, the sea appears to be red in color. The outer surface, the surface of the sea appears to be red in color. And we call it as red tides. And red tides, they are harmful than algal blooms because just like in algal blooms, here also they will cut off the sunlight supply into the water. They deplete the oxygen content in water. Apart from that, they will release certain toxins, certain poisonous substances, which was not found in the case of algal bloom. Here they release a toxic substance and these toxic substances can poison the aquatic plants and animals. Once again, red tides are caused by the rapid growth of red dinoflagellates. One example for red dinoflagellate is Goniolax. Due to pollution, when the water bodies receive excess supply of nutrients like phosphates, nitrates, etc., it will result in the rapid growth of these organisms and they form a layer on the surface of the sea, imparting red color to the sea. And definitely they'll be cutting off sunlight penetration, deplete the oxygen present in the water body, and also release some toxic substances which can kill, which can poison the aquatic plants and animals. So red tides as well as algal blooms, both are very important. It can be asked for 1 or 2 marks question. Toxins released by these organisms can kill the other marine organisms like fishes. So that was about dinoflagellates. Any doubt about dinoflagellates? As I told you, dinoflagellates, the name, from the name itself, 1 point you will get. They have 2 flagella. One is placed transversely, one is placed longitudinally. Both are arising from the furrows or some gaps present in the cellulose cell plates. Their cell wall is unique. It consists of cellulose cell plates. So all that points we had discussed. Then we told about the formation of red tides, and they are, majority of them are marine and they are photosynthetic because they have the green pigment chlorophyll, which can trap solar energy and carry out photosynthesis. But all are not only green in color, they come in different colors depending upon the pigment prominent in them. They can come in different colors like yellow, green, brown, blue, red, etc. That was about dinoflagellates. Now we are moving on to the third class of protista, euglenoids. Hope you are familiar with the organism Euglena. Euglena is a unicellular organism. Maybe you have learned in 8th standard or 7th standard. And as you can see in the figure, you can see a green color there. So that itself gives you an idea how they are carrying out or what is their mode of nutrition. Let us learn more about it. These are freshwater organisms. So they are not found in marine water, but found in fresh water and stagnant water. Stagnant water means the water which is not flowing, getting settled at one place. That is known as stagnant water. So they are found in fresh water, especially in stagnant water. And the other two classes, when we discussed, we learned about the speciality of its cell wall. But euglenoids, they don't have a cell wall. Instead, they have a protein-rich layer, which is known as pellicle. And pellicle, when you compare with cellulose cell walls, that is rigid. The cell wall made out of cellulose is very rigid, but pellicle made out of protein is a flexible layer. A point to be noted, in euglenoids, cell wall is absent. Instead, what they have is pellicle. Cell wall is replaced, or in place of cell wall, they have pellicle. What is pellicle? It's a protein-rich layer. How is it unique or how is it different from cell wall? Cell wall is very rigid, whereas pellicle is highly flexible. Now moving on to the next point. Here also they have two flagella. One will be long and one will be small. A short and a long flagella. They are photosynthetic. They have the green pigment chlorophyll, but there is something special about their mode of nutrition. They cannot carry out photosynthesis throughout. They see the situations. So according to the conditions, they will perform their mode of nutrition. When it is very sunny, when they have enough sunlight, they'll go for photosynthesis. But when there is no sunlight, by some reason they are deprived of sunlight, then they will carry out heterotrophic mode of nutrition. They feed on smaller organisms and they satisfy their hunger. So once again, we were discussing about the third category. The third category or third class coming under kingdom Protista. As I told you, they are freshwater, found in stagnant water, and they do not have cell wall. Instead, they have a flexible layer made of protein. You call it as pellicle. If it is asked, where is pellicle found? In which class of organisms you can find pellicle? It is Euglena. And there is something unique about their mode of nutrition also. They, according to the situations, they can switch on to heterotrophic and autotrophic mode of nutrition. When they get plenty of sunlight, enough sunlight, they'll carry out photosynthesis. But when there is no sunlight or by some reason they are deprived of sunlight, they'll carry out heterotrophic mode of nutrition by feeding on smaller organisms. And the chlorophyll pigment present in euglenoids are similar to that found in higher plants. That is why they are capable of carrying out photosynthesis just like green plants. One typical example for euglenoid is Euglena. That is what you see in the figure. Okay, Euglena's figure is displayed. I hope you have no doubts. Any slide you want me to repeat again before I proceed to the next one, you can tell me. Hope you have no doubts. Michael, any doubt?
Ma'am, can you repeat because my net
Nevin?
got cut.
Yes,
No.
Nevin?
My net got cut in the.
Can you speak a little louder, child?
My net got cut.
So you want euglenoids to be repeated again?
Second to third point, fourth point.
Oh, okay, I'll repeat. Second to fourth point. Okay. So I'll just quickly say once again about euglenoids. They are freshwater organisms and you can mainly find them in stagnant water. Means the water which is not flowing, getting settled at a particular region. And here cell wall is absent. But in chrysophytes and the second category, dinoflagellates, there was something unique about their cell walls. But here cell wall is absent, but it is replaced by a flexible layer which is made out of protein. You call it as pellicle. And here too they have flagella to carry out nutrition and locomotion. They have one short and a long flagella. They are capable of photosynthesis and at the same time they can carry out heterotrophic nutrition. When sunlight is available, they go for photosynthesis. In the absence of sunlight, they'll carry out heterotrophic mode of nutrition. And the pigments, the photosynthetic pigments present in them are similar to that found in higher plants. And one typical example for euglenoid is euglena. Now we are moving on to the fourth category or fourth class, slime molds. When you hear the term molds, you should not think it is a fungus. It comes under the category of Protista or kingdom Protista. The fourth class is slime molds. They are saprophytic. They are saprophytic. Saprophytic, you know, what is meant by saprophytic mode of nutrition? Michael, what do you mean by saprophytic mode of nutrition?
It means they do the digestion outside of their body and then absorb the nutrients.
No, not clear. Once again, what do they feed on? I'll give you another clue. This mode is usually found in fungi. A typical mode of nutrition found in fungi. Can you tell me now?
Bread mold.
No, that is a fungi. Slime mold is not a fungi. But my question is, what do you mean by saprophytic mode of nutrition? What do they feed on?
They feed on
Dead and
decaying.
This is something basic you have learned. 10th standard also you have learned. So they feed on dead and decaying organisms. So that mode of nutrition is known as, yes, saprophytic mode of nutrition. Now, next point, their body moves along decaying twigs and leaves and keep on engulfing organic material. As I told you, they are saprophytic and their body, they keeps on moving along with decaying twigs, small branches of plants or their leaves. So along with that, attached to them, they'll keep on moving and they will be engulfing, taking in all the organic material. And when the conditions are suitable, they form an aggregation. They form a group. Many of them, many slime molds will together form a structure known as plasmodium. And as the number of organisms joined increases, they will grow and spread over several feet. I'll repeat once again. And before I continue, I just want to tell you something. Plasmodium, you are familiar. You have learned in your lower classes about Plasmodium. It is a protozoan which causes malaria, or you call it as malarial parasite, which is spread by female Anopheles mosquito. But that protozoan is entirely different from this Plasmodium. So these two Plasmodium, which we discussed now, they are entirely different. I'm not speaking about the protozoan Plasmodium. Even though the words are same, they have two or they have entirely different meanings. I'll again repeat the same thing. When the conditions are suitable, slime molds, many slime molds will combine together and form a structure known as Plasmodium. And as and when more and more are added, they'll start growing and it can even spread over several feet. That happens only during favorable conditions. Formation of Plasmodium takes place during favorable conditions. And when the situation becomes unfavorable, when the situations become unfavorable, the plasmodium undergoes differentiation and they form certain fruiting bodies, or you can even call it as sporangia, where the spores are produced, and they will be producing spores at their tips. And these spores, they are covered by some resistant walls. They have true walls. And the speciality of spores is that they have extremely resistant walls surrounding it, and like that they can remain for years. And when the situations are favorable, they can germinate and form new organism. And spores being light in weight, they can be carried to far away places. I'll repeat all the points once again. We were dealing with the fourth class coming under Protista. It includes slime molds. Hearing the name molds, you should not get confused that it is a fungus. It's not a fungus, it's a Protista, but the name is slime molds. And coming to the features, these are saprophytic, just like fungi, they are also saprophytic. Saprophytes means organisms which feed on dead and decaying particles. And you can find them moving along with the parts of the plant, eating all the organic material available. Okay? Then, plasmodium is another unique feature found in slime molds. Plasmodium, when I say, you should not misunderstand that I'm speaking about the protozoan plasmodium, which causes malaria. This is an entirely different plasmodium. When the conditions are suitable, many slime molds come together and they join together, forming a structure known as plasmodium. As more and more organisms are added, they will grow and their size can increase up to several feet. And the plasmodium, even though it is formed under suitable condition, it becomes useful during unfavorable conditions. When the conditions are unfavorable for other modes of reproduction, plasmodium will undergo differentiation and they form certain fruiting bodies. And you call these fruiting bodies even a sporangium or sporangia in plural, and they produce spores at their tips. And the spores are produced in large amounts and they are light in weight and they can be carried by air currents. Along with the wind, they can take away to faraway places. And they have hard outer covering. They have true walls. They have hard outer covering, which will help them to withstand the unfavorable condition, so to tide over the unfavorable condition. When the situations become favorable, these spores will germinate and they will produce a new organism. Very, very important. Plasmodium. What is plasmodium? When it is formed, what is the advantage of forming a plasmodium? And now moving on to the last one. That is, which one is the last one? Which group forms the last class? Protozoans. Protozoans, they form the last class coming under phylum Protista. That's the last group. And phylum Protista, kingdom Protista, the last class coming under this kingdom is protozoan. You call it as protozoans. And protozoans, they are heterotrophic. They can either act as predators or parasites. Predators means they will be feeding on some other organism. They will prey upon another organism. Parasites means they live inside or outside the body of the host and takes nourishment. They are believed to be the primitive relatives of animals because they have some typical characteristic features of animal kingdom. And you can again subdivide class Protozoa into 4 types: amoeboid protozoans, flagellated protozoans, ciliated protozoans, and sporozoans. Once again, the last class of kingdom Protista is protozoans. They are heterotrophic. They can either be predator or parasite. They are the primitive relatives of animals since they have some typical features of animal kingdom. You can subdivide them further into 4 major groups: amoeboid, Children, sorry, we had a power failure. I'll just conclude what we were discussing. We were discussing with the last class coming under kingdom Protista. And there are 4 groups coming under that: amoeboid protozoans, ciliated protozoans, flagellated protozoans, and sporozoans. About each one you will be learning in next class. So once again, I'll repeat the 4 groups: amoeboid protozoans, ciliated protozoans, flagellated protozoans, and sporozoans. More about each of this group you will be learning in next class. Any doubts? Do you have any doubts? Meenakshi, just repeat the 4 groups once again. 4 groups coming under kingdom, coming under this particular category, that is protozoans. Meenakshi, unmute.
Ma'am, amoeboid protozoans, flagellated protozoans, ciliated protozoans, and sporozoans.
Sporozoans. Okay. And Punya, tell me what is meant by a plasmodium with respect to slime molds.
Plasmodium, they form an aggregation when the conditions are favorable.
Yes.
And
What is the advantage of forming a plasmodium?
They grow up to several feet, and when the conditions are unfavorable,
yes,
they form spores which will survive for many years.
Yes, very
and,
good.
They can be dispersed by air currents.
And under suitable conditions or on the return of favorable conditions, spores Did you hear what I said? Suddenly Zoom got cut off. So I'll just conclude what I was saying. So when the situations are favorable, the spores can germinate and they can form new organisms. Clear? So we'll wind up our session for today. No doubts, no children? Yes?
No,
So we'll
ma'am.
see you next class. Please go through what has been covered. Any doubts, you can ask me even on WhatsApp. Okay? Bye.